for December. There's that unique Denver smell in the air that means snow is on its way, so everyone get ready. But we will kick it off with a roll call. So are you ready for me, Alan? Sweet. Joni Allen?
I'm ill tonight, so I'm sorry, but I'm present.
All right, thanks, Joni. Sorry about that. Lucia.
Here.
Alicia Brown. All right, not seeing Alicia. Brian Carroll. Brian Carroll is in Hawaii. He notified us of his absence today. Ian Chowdhury.
I'm here.
Awesome. Jake Cohn is present. Amy Contreras.
Here.
Awesome. Alan here.
Yep.
Paul Gonzer.
You'll be here soon.
All right,
I have to move them over from panelists. I mean, from attendees.
no worries. Christopher Johnson. All right. Gary Johnson.
That's me.
Awesome. Joe Levy.
Here.
Awesome. Jamie Lewis.
Here.
Aileen McCallum.
Here.
Curtis Morrison. Not seeing Kurt just yet. Christopher Pacheco. All right. Jonathan Piera let me know that he's going to be joining us just a few minutes late today, but he will be here. And Julie Reskin. All right. And then I believe Tangier also has an excused absence today. All right. Okay. Anyone I missed from roll call? All right, we'll power ahead. I believe we need to vote on November's meeting minutes first here. Anyone want to second that motion? All right, I saw a head nod and a thumbs up. I'm gonna count that. I don't know if Robert would, but all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Awesome. Thanks, everyone. All right, now we're going to hand it over to our second item on the agenda, the introduction of the new 2023 DOTI staff liaison.
Before I have Ninita introduce herself, I just wanted to say, as you all know, I've been with you since the beginning for almost all of you. And I've thoroughly enjoyed this, but it's time for me to move on and do my real job with DOTI, which I'm in contracts. So I have the pleasure of introducing Ninita. I think you're going to thoroughly enjoy working with her. I absolutely adore her. And I think she's going to make a great fit for the next couple of year or so for the advisory board as you guys migrate into, really solidifying this board and the importance to DOTI and the citizens of Denver. So Ninita, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi guys, sorry. I'm having like a swallowing nose and eyes from the allergy food. I'm Ninita, I'm a staff assistant at DOTI. I'm excited and a little bit nervous, but I know with the training of Michelle, I will do just fine.
So just like me, Ninita will be your connection to DOTI and to the city. So if you need anything, it's always easier to come through us and then we can find our way. If not, some of the emails get lost in the ethosphere of the city. So please use us. That's what we're here for. We're also the ones that set up the meetings and make sure that everybody can get into the meetings and et cetera. So we are your connection to making sure that this runs smoothly So please, in the January and February, I'll be working with Anita, and then we'll transition that, and then she will be all yours and you will be all hers. So thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Michelle.
Jamie, I see your hand raised.
Yeah, I just wanted to put out a shout out for Michelle and all the great work she's done. I'm speaking on behalf of the whole group. We wish you luck on the new work you're going to do, but really appreciate all the stuff you've done for us. And welcome, Anita.
Thank you, Jam.
Thanks, Jamie.
I'd also like to add in a note along the same lines. It's been a real pleasure, Michelle. You've been a great teammate and really good at particularly in helping the board as a whole, and also the chairs with every meeting. And it just means the world to us. So we thank you so much for your support over the year and a half or so. And very excited to work with you and Anita.
Thank you, guys. It feels like 5 or 6 years, but it's only been a year and a half. You're right. We've done a lot in the last year and a half. So, and I think you guys are going to make, I mean, what a difference this advisory board is going to make over the next couple of years, especially to DOTI. We're very happy to have you guys, on our side too, but also on the side of the citizens to make sure that we're doing exactly what we should be doing. I think Ben might be.
Yeah, go ahead, Ben.
Good afternoon, everyone. Don't want to take up too much floor space here, but since we're introducing new folks in the way of Nanita and thanking Michelle for her good work, I thought I'd introduce myself as a newbie, so I'm not just a strange face sitting in the virtual corner over here. Dr. Ben Sanders, I recently joined the DOTI team working as a strategic advisor in the Office of Internal and External Affairs. I'll mostly be focusing on internal stuff, but the way that that's shaped means that I'm really interested in some of the work you all are doing, especially in the way of being a liaison on behalf of community. So this is obviously my first meeting here with the advisory board. I have to jump off right around 5, unfortunately, this week, but I'm really excited to continue my onboarding and to learn about the important work you all are doing in this group.
And actually, Ben, this is your second meeting with us. And we were so odd last time you came and spoke to us, but you were with your other role.
Oh, that's right. Well, I don't know if that one counts though, Michelle. I don't think I can count attending in
We
previous
are
roles.
so happy that you're with DOTI. That's all I can say.
I'm really happy to be with DOTI as well. I'm thrilled to be on the team and really excited to learn about the work of this group. So thanks for giving me a little bit of space to introduce myself.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Director Phipps.
First of all, good afternoon, advisory board. It's good to see you all and happy holidays. In recognition of the effort that Michelle has put forward to help us stand up this advisory board and continue with the onboarding of Nanita, who are equally as excited to have on board here. I wanted to recognize Michelle with a cultural coin. Here in DOTI, we have 7 cultural behaviors in which we onboard all of our staff with and truly trend within the organization. For the above and beyond effort that Michelle's demonstrated over the last year plus, I want to give her the coin for fostering positive interactions and celebrating successes. And that will come with a little spot-on gift card for her to recognize her, as well as a nice certificate. So Michelle, on behalf of me, on behalf of Nick, I just want to thank you for the leadership you've played in the DOTI cultural behaviors you've demonstrated.
And you guys have never received a coin. This is huge, ever. I'm so excited. Thank you. Thank you, Adam. Thank you, everyone. And I'm going to turn my camera off because I'm going to start crying. So I'm out.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you.
Well, don't go too far, Michelle. Again, so much appreciation, but I do need your help in supporting me through the public comments. So if you need a second, I'll give it to you.
No, I'm good. I'm good. I'm just going to turn my camera off. I'll be the person behind the camera.
All right.
Got
Perfect. Who do we have up first for public comment, Michelle?
We actually had Councilperson Ortega. Oh, there she is. Councilperson Ortega, I'm going to move you over to panelists. Just let us know you joined. There she is. Welcome, Councilperson Ortega.
Okay, looks like I'm connected. So you want me to speak?
Yes, please.
Yes, go for it.
You have the floor.
So first of all, I want to thank all of you for making the commitment to serve on this important advisory committee. I don't know if you're aware, but a few years ago, members of City Council wanted to put a number of issues on the ballot. I chaired that committee, and this is one that I carried forward, making sure that we had a similar body to the one that we have for Parks and Recreation Department. And it took a little while to get it all set up, and really appreciate the time each of you have made to be part of these conversations and to, you know, look at the projects that DOTI brings forward. And I know part of the process was also to look at their annual budget and give some input into that as well. I do want to make a very brief comment and would love to maybe come on at another time. It's a little challenging because we normally meet on Mondays for City Council, and we have a little break in between our 3:30 and our 5 o'clock meeting right now. But I want to say that I went out and met with the residents at the Broadway, Ohio, I-25 on and off ramps to Lincoln and Broadway. And I believe that the residents have some legitimate concerns about pedestrian safety issues that will be exacerbated with the plans that are proposed for that project. I understand there is anticipation that construction is going to begin soon, but I really believe this is a project that DOTI needs to take a step back and really listen to the concerns of the residents, because it is along a pathway that people are automatically going to walk, and they're going to have to cross multiple lanes of traffic to get there. And I know I'm not supposed to be talking about issues, but just want to raise that and would love to have further input into that in the immediate future. I believe I do have a meeting scheduled with the mayor's office and someone from DOTI, and I think it is to talk about this project. And at some point, I would like to give you all an update on the railroad safety efforts that we have been working on in our city, that DOTI has been spearheading the contract for with HNTB, who has been putting together a risk analysis. And so at some point, I hope to share all of that with you, get your input as we move to create an ordinance that gives agencies the authority to address life safety issues for developments that are going in with a close proximity to our freight railroad tracks, many of which carry flammable liquids and hazardous materials, and oftentimes sit right outside of residential and commercial buildings that we're permitting to build and be located very close to our tracks. So thank you again very much for the opportunity, and appreciate the work that you all do as community members. But I want to say thank you to DOTI and their team of people for the work they do in our city day in and day out.
Thank you, Councilperson Ortega. And good news, this is our last Monday meeting of the DOTI board. So excited to potentially free up some space in the calendar for you some more.
Awesome, thank you.
Yep. And additionally, I do know from the I-25 and Broadway subcommittee, we have requested a response to the neighborhood, the neighbors' requests document in the letter to DOTI. I know it's been with the department since early September, and we would love to see a response before the end of the year, really. At this point, it seems very reasonable and well thought out. So would definitely support that as well.
Thank you, and I'm going to sign off.
Thank you. Okay, our second speaker of the night is Alejandra. I will promote you to panelist. Please let me know when you've joined. There you are. You have the floor when you're ready.
Hello, let me see here, start my video. Hello, this is Alejandra Castañeda. I'm a North Denver resident. I have spoken in front of you before with my daughter and her classmates at Academia Sandoval, 37th and SUNY, and now she's going to Skinner Middle School, fortunately half a block away. I am not a person who owns a private vehicle, so I move by foot and transit and bike. And I was getting ready to talk about the Pocket Gov report a problem tool because I use that a lot to report issues that I see around my neighborhood when I'm moving around outside of a car, to share my experiences and the concerns. And I also feel like I'm supporting DOTI in, reporting things that need to be addressed for the health and safety of our community. I wish that they would upgrade this tool so that people could add at least 2 or 3 pictures and maybe a video. Sometimes those things, are much better at explaining the issue than just one image. I also want to encourage you to see how the response to those submissions, the responses I get are often underwhelming or dismissive of my concerns. And so I would like you to maybe look at that. And do they reflect the Vision Zero goals that the city says that we are trying to achieve? I'm also a little nervous today because my point was to talk about Pocket Gov, the tool that also I heard that a diverter has been nixed at 32nd and Clay, which is the new bikeway that's being installed, and because there were concerns about neighbors driving cars, being inconvenienced by this new diverter. And finally, there's a traffic circle a block and a half from my house at West 41st and Grove that was recently installed. And I stood there today. I do my own personal studies because I am very, very passionate about this. And people driving large trucks, a Suburban, a pickup truck, a Nissan, that big one that the name is escaping, Armada, with a military name, just using this traffic circle like wasn't there, turning left below the circle, going around without giving pedestrians the right of way. So I don't know what we can do to design infrastructure that lets drivers know that they're driving very dangerous machines and that pedestrians and other street users also have a right to enjoy safe and healthy streets. So thank you for listening to me. Thank you for all the work you do. Thank you to DOTI for what you do. And I hope that you will continue working on, upgrading, making streets safer, not just for me, but for my neighbors, for my daughter, for wheelchair users, for all people. Thank you.
Thank you, Alejandra. I'm going to promote our next speaker, which is Amy. Amy, I'm going to promote you to panelist. Please let us know when you join. Floor is yours.
Hi, guys. This is Amy Kenrai. I am speaking tonight on behalf of the West Washington Park Neighborhood Association. I'm the president of that organization. As you know, the I-25 and Broadway interchange project is in our boundaries. You've already mentioned, so you already know that we've had no response to our September 1st letters. They were conducting a reevaluation. I'm not sure if that's still in progress or not, since DOTI hasn't communicated anything to us since the end of August. To our surprise, we found out by communicating with CDOT that DOTI has sent their bid package over to CDOT. And the next step on CDOT's end is to review that bid package either in December or January, approve it, giving DOTI the green light to advertise the project, which is kind of the final step, according to Dr. Cog, as far as what they want DOTI to do before construction begins. So I just want to communicate a sense of urgency that now is the time to avoid a lot more expense if there is a chance to make design changes that improve access for people walking and biking from our neighborhood to Broadway Station, which is about 1/4 mile. And as you guys know, crossing 4 highway ramps and 19 lanes of fast moving traffic along with the high injury network is just not acceptable. So I was about crying when I saw that Debbie Ortega got on here and did public comment. We're really desperate and we'd appreciate any help that you guys can be. Thanks.
Thanks, Amy. Okay, I'm going to turn it. Those are our 3 speakers that had signed up.
Awesome. All right, then we'll turn it over to DOTI leadership for the report. Director Phipps, is that you today?
If I can find the mute button, I think somebody else from the department is supporting with the leadership report. I just wanted an opportunity to address the committee here. But Ben, is that I don't see Nick on yet. I don't know if Ben, if you have the report.
It's not me today, Adam. So not
All
sure
right.
where that fell.
I'll ping Nick here after I say a couple words, and then if you don't mind, we'll jump back to it if we need to. Does that work?
Sure.
Nick? Perfect. Well, again, I just wanted to take the opportunity to say happy holidays to everybody and just share a couple of exciting announcements, as well as certainly address Broadway and I-25 here, everybody, as that is a concern. And first of all, I'll start by saying apologies that we have not gotten back to you from the September letter or kept you up to speed on kind of our communication there. So I can certainly assure you that we've been working through an evaluation of that and truly trying to understand where we originally got to, why we were there, where we're at now, but also take into account the feedback that we're receiving right now, which we genuinely take into account here. We had a draft response that Nick and I intended to share with the committee today. And on Friday, after walking through it, we just didn't feel like we quite got to where we needed to yet. And so I'd rather put the right information in front of you all and inform you all based on the entirety of the picture, as well as us having the ability to take into feedback, all of what we've heard specifically as of late. And so what I can tell you is we'll certainly get back to you before the end of the year. That is not an unreasonable expectation from us or of us by any means. So do know that that's coming, and we recognize some of the safety concerns that folks are worried about there. With that, I'll pause, just knowing that that was both a topic that Amy brought up, as well as Councilwoman Ortega. Any questions about that before I move on here?
Director Phipps, will that be shared with both this whole board as well as the neighborhood association?
Yep, correct. So we'll respond directly to the neighborhood association. In fact, the letter right now is directed directly to Ms. Kenrai, recognizing that that's where we originally received it from. But we'll keep everybody in the advisory board CC'd on that, and certainly we'll expect that to be a step of continuous dialogue with the board here, as opposed to any type of final decision or just a blanket path forward.
Thank you.
And also recognize with the subcommittee stood up that we'll make ourselves as available as you need us to address any individual questions as we work through it there as well. All right, I'll keep going here. A couple of exciting pieces of news. For any of you that follow our interactions with City Council, you'll recognize that we brought forward a couple of amendments as it relates to our Colfax BRT project. Amendments that will actually allow us to hit the FTA grant submission a year ahead of schedule, which will ultimately get us to fair revenue service in 2026. So although that may seem like an eternity, it certainly does when I look at the calendar, a significant improvement on accelerating the delivery of that project to really kind of start what is the BRT revolution that we're going to see in Denver. Shortly followed by work that we're partnering with CDOT on Federal Boulevard, and of course efforts that we're looking at throughout the city, including certainly Colorado Boulevard and Spear and other areas as well. So kind of BRT has been a large area of success that we've been able to move forward, and excited to really get a reliable, dependable transit service on its way to Denver. So excited to share that. We can certainly provide more information on that. And in addition, we also have the 2023 budget officially passed by City Council. There were a number of amendments that were directly related to the work that we do here in DOTI that were included in that final budget. And I know we had the opportunity to bring Earl, our CFO, into the committee and kind of present on where we were a couple months ago. But if anybody has questions on the final budget, certainly happy to make Earl or myself available again to walk through those nuances or any of the specifics that you may have questions around. So Jake, if you just want to kind of keep that in the back of mind for future agendas, we're happy to kind of keep that as a continuous dialogue. We also want to start the process for 2024 as soon as possible, so that we can be in a position where we embrace a new administration with the ability to inform them to the best ability possible. And I'd love to do that both as a department and an advisory board congruently. So I want to make sure that that's on the front of everybody's mind as well. The other items I wanted to mention here was two citizen-led initiatives that did pass on the November ballot, which is exciting. Both of them impact DOTI, but in a couple of different ways. The first being the Waste No More around recycling and compost for a broader industry than just the residents of Denver, at least the residents that we serve with their solid waste, recycling, and compost needs. And DOTI has a big role as it plays into both regulation and enforcement of that. So we're partnering with the CASR department here in the city to prepare for implementations around that, which is certainly exciting. And then I think probably the biggest news in transportation in a long time, the passing of the sidewalk initiative, Initiative 307. And so certainly Denver voters were clear in alignment with, I think, what many of you also see as a priority, which is we need to make sure that our city is walkable, and really a desire to set the bar in the United States on what a walkable city looks like. So for those of you that are more familiar with the initiative, there's a lot to it. There's a lot of great thought that went into it. And there are certainly some challenges that we need to work through as well. And that's exactly what the team at DOTI is working on right now. We do expect some initial actions around creating the financing structure and the billing structure in the immediate short term in the next few weeks. You'll see some of those actions at council, but we'll continue to work on a DOTI committee that we've stood up here to start prepping for the rollout and implementation of that initiative. I will say that it is big. Just to put into context, what we're anticipating is an annual funding amount that's about equivalent to what we do from a street maintenance standpoint. And so if you think curb and gutter and asphalt, we're talking about implementation scale that is of equivalency to what we do between the sidewalks now at the sidewalks. So certainly a lot of exciting work to come there, and we'll continue to bring this advisory board up to speed as we roll out that initiative. With that, I think those are the few things I wanted to hit, and I see Nick here too, so he might have a couple additional items he wants to emphasize on the DOTI staff report.
No, nothing more to add. Thank you, Mr. Phipps, for joining us today.
Certainly. Jake, happy to take questions, comments, concerns, whatever is appropriate at this time.
Yeah, do we have any from the board?
Jake, yeah, Jamie Lewis. On the 21st, we'll have our DOTI policy meeting. If you do have that letter finished concerning the I-25, you're more than welcome to come and present it there. It's a lot easier to present it in person via Zoom rather than just an email. And the other thing I wanted to point out is that the policy committee will be looking at ways to improve the sidewalk initiative. I know that the group, which included me, I'm one of the initiators of that ballot issue, know that there could be some tweaks and changes to that. So we're going to be brainstorming also on the 21st on that. So I just wanted to share that with you guys.
Yeah, certainly, Jamie and Nick, just to bring you up to speed a little bit, there is some concern raised earlier, both by Ms. Kenrai as well as Councilwoman Ortega, about the time it's taken DOTI to respond to the September letter as it relates to Broadway and I-25. And I shared with him that I agree it's taken us too long. I also shared with them that you and I had worked through a draft on Friday that we didn't quite think was there yet, as we wanted to make sure that we were able to incorporate all the feedback that we received just even over the last week. And so I committed to making sure that we get that to them before the month is over.
Not seeing any additional quick hand raises. So I definitely add some comments, Director Phipps, that huge congratulations on the budget approval, as well as the BRT speed up. I was thrilled to see that news. I'm very excited to prove that we can do exciting things with infrastructure in America. And that was a really cool key step. I know there's a lot of people along Colfax that are just thrilled for that, and it'll serve the city very well, as well as the budget as a whole. Sounds like it's not boring over at DOTI. So we'll work hard over here and do our best to support the department as well.
Thank you, Jake.
Yep. All right. With that being said, I think we can hand it over to Rolf Eisinger for the High Injury Network presentation.
All right, let me just kind of get situated here. So if you need to get another drink of water or stand up and stretch, let me see if I can figure out how to share my screen on Zoom.
We got it.
Let's see here. Get used to the controls here, and we'll get rolling. All right, here we go. Okay. Okay, I think we're good. All right, here we go. Okay, so thank you for that. So hello and good evening. My name is Rolf Eisinger. For those who may be new to the board, I was here actually a year ago to the date, basically. I help manage the city's Vision Zero program within DOTI and within transportation planning. With me is Mike King, who's going to help chat a little bit about and describe a few of our projects, including our road safety audit initiative and also our speed limit reduction feasibility study that I believe there was a question about. Again, thank you for the invitation to present about the Denver Vision Zero program and the High Injury Network. This is actually a pretty great timing because we're currently updating our action plan. So this provides a unique opportunity to share with you what we've learned about the program and the High Injury Network. Much of this is still being vetted and is draft, but it's some of the data that's coming out that will be included in our new update. So let's see here. I'll present for maybe, I don't know, maybe 15 or so slides. I think you all had received them, and then there are several slides with the questions. Just didn't want to forget any of the questions that folks sent ahead of time. There'll be plenty of time to chat about the different questions you all had. As many of you are familiar with, traffic fatalities have increased, and not just in Denver, but across the state and across the country. So I wanted to show you all last year where we were at, and then this year where we're at with traffic fatality. Well, I'd say 2020 and then 2021. 2022, we have not surpassed 2021 numbers yet. Well, I believe that I have a slide that shows that too. So as you're familiar with, the Vision Zero Action Plan was released in 2017, and we've committed to provide annual updates since then. And now we're working on, like I talked about, updating the plan. And as part of the plan update, we've done a lot of public involvement and data analysis. A lot of that public involvement had aligned with the Denver Moves Everyone plan. So we've been able to leverage that public outreach that DME, Denver Moves Everyone, had already done, which helped reaffirm 0 is the right goal for traffic fatalities and serious injuries, as well as additional conclusions regarding supporting the Vision 0 principles. We can talk about those in a minute, but safety and security is a key value for Denver residents, especially BIPOC members. Street design's top priority over safety campaigns. Not to say we shouldn't do safety campaigns, but definitely have to focus on the street design. Folks thought a walkable and green future would be the safest. And for open-ended questions, people commented on the need to improve safety for vulnerable roadway users and address speeding. Vulnerable roadway users are people walking, bicycling, even our motorcyclists. So moving right along there. Regarding the Vision 0 principles, they speak to, and I know we talked about it the last presentation, and they were in the presentation that was sent out, but basically, focus on a systematic process over changing individual behaviors. Speed is a key contributing factor with the severity and crash frequency, and people make mistakes. So try to make the infrastructure system as forgiving as possible so their mistakes do not cost them their lives or lead to a debilitating injury. As for data collection and analysis, there are several areas we looked at. I know this is a busy slide, and I have a slide for each of these, but just kind of an overview real quick regarding the different analysis that we had done with our crash data. And jumping into this, first, again, we'll see that the majority of people travel by vehicle, but those who walk, bike, ride motorcycles are disproportionately affected by traffic fatalities. On another note, draw your attention, I don't know if you can see my cursor here, but people riding transit so far is the safest way to get around our city. So once you get on a bus or light rail, pretty safe getting around. And that really speaks to what you all are talking about, building out BRT, expanding that network. And I'll touch on that later on as it relates to our high injury network and street design. Second, we see that there are several contributing factors to our crashes, including substance abuse, speed, seatbelt usage, and distraction. Again, we focus on street design, but it's important to understand some of those other contributing factors that are leading to our serious bodily injury crashes and our fatal crashes. What folks can do on their own, the more the better. Buckle up, drive sober, wear a helmet, and put the distractions down. They make a huge difference. Overall, crashes on the high injury network have been declining slightly since 2017. So looking at all the crashes, they are going down. But looking at SBI and fatal crashes, we are seeing more on the high injury network in certain areas, as well as other roadways too. Because if crashes are going down to the high injury network currently, where are those crashes popping up? And some of our data analysis is helping us determine where those locations are and helping then assign resources projects to help mitigate those problems. But looking at the SBI and fatal crashes, we have a higher rate per mile on our high injury network compared to local streets or collectors, or even some of the other arterials that we did not define as our high injury network. Thought this was fascinating. So we analyzed crash data on the existing high injury network, and we determined there are really two types of high injury network areas. We have tier 1 and tier 2. So tier 1, you'll see the SBI and fatal crash rates per mile are over 20, whereas second tier, they're just under 3.5 per mile. So this helps us do a couple things. One is it helps us prioritize resources in a smaller area along these certain segments. It also helps us over time see the changes more at a micro level, so to speak. But then for the tier 2, it acts as an early warning system. So we're watching these areas since some of our crash data is delayed, 2 years old in some instances, looking at a 5-year average. So we definitely want to keep those yellow areas on the map and watch those areas to see what we can do. And also, if we see projects coming up, what other safety interventions can be a part of some of those projects coming up through so we can better minimize those crashes. Anyways. In addition, there are additional roadways, like I talked about, that are popping up that we are prioritizing for safety improvements. And you can see that 13th and 14th here and Morrison Road are a few locations that are popping up and looking at adding those to our high injury network. Something else that we're pretty excited about is another lens that we analyze data through, and more of this cluster analysis. So the cluster analysis identifies areas where there are 10 or more bicycle or pedestrian involved crashes occur within a certain area, again, that 5-year time frame. We also did this for motorcyclists too. And these are mode specific focus areas. As you can see, there are a lot of dots all over this map. And sometimes it can be overwhelming as to where do you start? Where do you start prioritizing your resources? Yes, we have our high energy network with regards to a corridor, but what about more of a cluster area? Maybe it's a commercial district. Maybe there are a couple of high energy network crossings, or maybe it's other roadway types, and some of those different types of crashes spill off of the high energy network onto other types of roadways. So this is allowing us to prioritize those areas. And the idea is we take that corridor wide approach, or the corridor approach, the road safety audit approach. For those who aren't familiar with that, it's really a multidisciplinary team of traffic engineers, transportation planners, first responders, police, and we go out on site and we walk the corridors, we look at the crash data, we try to pair the root causes to effective countermeasures. So applying that instead of just a corridor, but instead like a polygon or an area to help us minimize crashes. So that's another area that we were looking at in order to really mitigate those bicycle and pedestrian related crashes around the city. We also looked at pre-crash maneuvers, and we see that making left turns appear to be a movement that can cause more serious crashes. I recall DPD telling me that your body is designed to take an impact from the front or the back, but not from the side. So if you can imagine making those left turns through an intersection and getting broadside hit, they do account for, yes, 13% of all crashes, but 22% of our serious bodily injury crashes and fatal crashes. So prioritizing those locations, determining where we can have protected left turn arrows, or even, even traffic safety cameras. They are an effective proven safety countermeasure. Oh, skipping ahead there. Hold on. All right. So as for our proportions of crashes in our areas of higher and lower inequities, we see that all crashes are higher in low inequity areas. But if we look at SBI and fatal crashes and pedestrian and bicycle crashes, we see that they are higher. They're being overrepresentative in those areas. So again, aligning resources, prioritizing those areas, trying to minimize those types of crashes in those areas is a goal for us. And we have the data to help support those decisions. Other areas that we're looking at, we're trying to better understand the number of under or just unreported traffic crashes Our peer stats in other cities, particularly Chicago, they had released a report, or at least a presentation I attended, where they talked about certain bicycle and pedestrian crashes were underreported by 40%. So those are not showing up in the crash data. So what we're trying to do is work with Denver Health, work with the hospitals, the state, to better understand hospitalizations of traffic-related crashes, and tie them back to the police reports and see which ones don't link up. And that helps us determine the number of crashes that are not reported. We're also documenting the strengths and weaknesses of the crash reporting database. Oftentimes police reports, they're used to determine who's at fault for insurance purposes. But at the end of the day, if we don't really care who's hurt, we want to make it safer for either party. So better looking at the crash data, better understanding in terms of traffic safety is our goal. So trying to better understand how we can get the data we need in order to make those engineering safety kind of decisions so that that crash doesn't happen again. Or also, I believe of interest to me, I mentioned maybe next meeting, next month, hearing about some safety policy, well, just DOTI policies, but that's something that we're also looking into using DME and their analysis, but better understanding DOTI traffic related policies and how they can be refined to address crashes. So that's another area in the new update that we'll be focusing on. And also how the Denver Moves Everyone equity framework can determine unintended inequitable consequences for our Vision Zero projects, programs, and policies. So better understanding, are there inequitable consequences, and then how can we mitigate those consequences? And again, linking DOTI's Vision Zero goals and partner agency goals, we align on resources to eliminate traffic fatalities and serious injuries. One example that comes to mind, public health professionals, they may have a goal of reducing substance abuse for the general population. Well, our goal also, if we're seeing that popping up as a contributing factor, people driving while intoxicated or on substances, how can we work together to minimize that? Is an area, and it may not seem as a partnership, right away, but as you look at the crash data, you get into the reasons, and definitely it makes a lot of sense how we can work together to reach each other's common goal. All right, I got one more slide. Let's see here. Okay, so focus areas based on the data that we're seeing and kind of what I talked about so far, just some general conclusions, if you will. One, prioritizing people walking, people biking, people riding motorcycles, also prioritizing those arterials, the high entry network, particularly with those crash cluster areas, focusing on reducing speeds and hazardous behaviors, needing to collaborate across agencies. We cannot do this on our own, getting to zero. We need everybody's help, and engaging local communities is going to be key. So those are the focus areas that we're drawn from, and we're moving forward. Are there any questions so far before we get into your all's questions? I do see a hand. Yes, Julie?
Yeah, I read your presentation before, and this is really good. So I get that a lot of this is about creating a collaborative community and designing streets better and all of that. But at some point, what about, unless we're going to say everyone only uses public transit, which I'm personally fine with, but I don't see that getting traction. You have to deal with people's behavior, and particularly distracted driving and driving under the influence, but I'm really focusing on distracted driving. Some of us have been trying to get a bill passed with zero success for years, and if the city of Denver would join our efforts, that would be great, because I think part of why people are so eager to text and drive is that it's convenient. People always think it won't happen to them, but there's no real consequence for that now. So I was just wondering if where do people's behaviors come in? And again, I get that you're saying once it's happened, it's not about the fault, or it's not about assigning blame, it's about prevention. But as a transit using pedestrian and as someone that represents mostly that population, it feels like I'm just kind of curious about how does this fit in with the balance of dealing with people's individual behaviors.
Yeah. There's not one good answer there. It's hard to solve, I would say. But yes, better understanding what are the different traffic related policies that do change those behaviors is important. What is it going to take to get there? And that's something that bringing up with Nick and others, Jason, about where Denver's at with supporting and how we can move something like that forward in order to, at the end of the day, make it so people aren't distracted if they're driving. But if they're getting
or maybe just have that rule in Denver if we don't have it for the state, to say it's going to be an offense here in Denver. I don't know, if you can do that or not, but it just seems like it. I mean, I love the vision and I love better designs and all that, but I don't know how you idiot proof it enough.
Yeah. It'd be interesting to see the role of technology as it rolls out, and more to come on that. But I believe in the new infrastructure bill, there's something about new vehicle designs, providing warnings, providing some other technology in the vehicle that does get at that, in terms of if you're not paying attention, the vehicle will send you warnings or something. So I don't think they've figured it all the way out yet, but there is technology out there. I'd say for Denver and our vehicles, we do have a telematics program in our vehicles, and it does notify the supervisor if the employee is distracted in driving. So those are other technologies that we are leading by example, if you will. But yeah, there is technology out there that can mitigate that. All right. Any other questions?
Lucia?
Yeah, hi. I have two questions. One is sort of a data question. You talked about the left turn things, which got me wondering how many, I know a lot of those left turns into other cars, but how many pedestrian injuries or deaths come from right turns versus left turns? Do we have that data? And the second question, and you don't have to answer that right away because you'd have to probably look that up if you've got it. But my second question is, how can DOTI, and we as an advisory board, push the state for getting more usage of cameras? Because when I'm out there, it's not just distracted drivers or people under the influence. It seems to be a change in attitude of the drivers, generally speaking. Yesterday I was on a bus and I saw a car make a left turn from the middle lane in front of another car just because nobody could catch him. There were no cops around, and just because he could. And I've seen a lot of that. I'm at a red light, I'm just going to go. I mean, it's not like you're blowing through a red light that may have been a little pink. These are cars that are stopped at a red light and have decided they've waited long enough and just go. I have seen that so many times on Broadway and other places. And so I'm just kind of wondering if the Vision Zero program is working with the state to get some more laws passed, some more bills passed.
Yeah, maybe that's a comment that Jason can weigh in on our process with working with state legislatures on different safety related policies and bills if he's on. Trying to open up.
Yeah, sorry, trying to cough something out here. Jason Gallardo with the Department of Transportation and Infrastructure. I handle kind of their government affairs side of things. And this is something that we've been have brought up with state legislators in the past, and I think there's probably going to be more of a hunger now for it, especially as we see numbers across the nation continuing to rise on fatalities and accidents. So I think that this is something that we would definitely want to engage probably, if not this round, which I think is, January when they start session again, definitely have something in place for the next round to be able to get a bill passed. To Ralph's point, we've engaged them before, and there wasn't much interest from the state to revisit it at the time. But I do think that we're in a good situation to actually bring this up again and really push it. And support like this board and others is a big win for us. So
Thank you.
I also would piggyback on Lucia's comments a little bit there. I've actually heard twice over the past year from a DPD community engagement officer that DPD will not be enforcing, not that it's zero, but it'll be near zero enforcement of traffic laws until 2024 due to deprioritization for patrolling. That's pretty shocking to hear them say publicly. The most recent example was during a community event that Councilperson Amanda Sawyer had. So I'm sure it's recorded and available to find. But with DPD openly discussing that they will not be doing traffic enforcement, I'm getting pretty worried because I too am seeing crazy like blowings of red lights and speeding. And I anecdotally have multiple times seen officers within the vicinity that chose not to act. So I'm wondering at what point does the department itself start to look at automated enforcement? I know we have some traffic light cameras, but I know it's been a real struggle to expand that. Obviously, if with this becoming a widespread behavior, we do at a certain point have to address enforcement.
yeah, it's a really great point, Jake. And I'll point to the one side of the hard part is when it comes to the automated cameras at intersections stuff, that is controlled by state law. And that's kind of what I was referring to, is we have to engage the state to be able to expand our program there. The other side of it is we do have capabilities of putting vehicles out there. State law requires the vehicles that are out there to take, if you're speeding, they can catch you on camera and all that stuff, to be manned. Every one of those have to be manned. So in order for somebody to, an actual body has to be in there. We're hoping to maybe get some conversation started on where we have vehicles that are not, especially in high risk areas around schools during drop off and pickup and those type of areas, to maybe have vehicles put out where they're able to do ticketing and those type of things without an actual body being in the vehicle. These again are both ran by the state government, and we have to engage them to be able to increase how many we're allowed to have in the city.
Yeah, and next year's budget, DPD was approved for 3 more FTEs for people being in those or now they're SUVs. We have new contract, new SUVs. So we have some capacity, or they do, but the limiting factor was staff, like Jason mentioned. In addition to that, we are working with the state, jumping ahead to another question. One way we coordinate with them is working with them on adding red light safety cameras. So we're looking at another few locations, some are on state roads, some are on non-state roads, but we need their approval if we put it on their roadway, so to speak. But yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Will you guys be vocal about communicating with this board if you need assistance in communicating with the state? I'm sure there's many people on this board that would be happy to help the department kind of get that moving.
Absolutely. And my office actually works under Nick Williams, so he's always involved in all of these conversations. So I'm sure we can definitely bring questions or support your way when we need it.
Awesome. Use us, team.
Hi, Joe.
Yeah, I just had an observation that we're putting more and more vulnerable people out on the streets. I mean, I'm on Larimer Street, and so I see all these scooters and all these bicycles and everything. So if we really want to get this thing to zero, I think we have to offer some more, not outlandish, but just some more draconian even things, just run it up there. I know you're doing all this research, but it looks like it's growing faster, the people who will probably need more protection than actually we're moving. So I don't know that we're going to lower it without some major changes, either to, speed limits or doing all the stuff we're talking about. And I don't want to wait much longer because I just see more and more people. And, some of them, frankly, act fairly carelessly. And on top of that, people are running red lights more and more. So, I think we have a real dilemma. We got to make some really firm decisions here. Thank you.
Okay. Paul, is that a stale hand? No, new hand.
Yeah, it's one thing it seems like we kind of come back to this topic, so I wanted to speak to it, and it's outside of DOTI spectrum, which I realize is what this group is tasked to do. And I'll preface this with, I hate proposing things that I don't come with any sort of solution to. But so much of what we've discussed the last couple of months really revolves around an enforcement dynamic. DOTI has spoken to what they're doing with engineering and data gathering. And the common theme I keep hearing repeated is lack of enforcement for fill in the blank, right of way abuse, speed abuse, reckless driving abuse. And so, I hear what we're saying about City Council looking to add budgetary considerations for more photo radar vans. And that is well and good, but I've always felt as a Denver resident for the last 20 years that the photo radar vans, and this is anecdotal, I can't really back it up with anything other than my thoughts, and I hate bringing thoughts to a fact site, but more often than not, I feel like the photo radar vans are encountered in areas where it's sort of low-lying fruit, as opposed to areas that actually pose a lot of damage or risk, rather, to pedestrians. I'm talking along First Avenue in front of Denver Country Club, which doesn't exactly teem with pedestrians minus the sidewalk, but I very rarely observe pedestrians crossing First Avenue. I see them on Lincoln, which is sort of low-hanging fruit from busting people for speeding, but the pedestrian activity is on Broadway. So just anecdotally, we put money into those resources, and I feel that the public perception on those is that that is a money grab as opposed to a safety enforcer. So I hear what Joe is saying about, DPD saying they don't have the manpower to enforce traffic laws, and anecdotally saying they won't be prioritizing that for a year or two. And I wonder if that budget can't be used to putting officers on bikes, writing tickets and patrolling areas in places where people run red lights. Look, it's all bad, but if I have to rank my bad, people going 10 miles per hour over an artificially low speed limit, I'm looking at you, First Avenue to Spear in the Country Club neighborhood, to me is less bad than 5 cars running the red light at a high impact pedestrian intersection. So I know this kind of oversteps the boundaries of this panel, but it always seems to me that, DOTI sort of plays the prevent defense, and then it's up to law enforcement to be the enforcement mechanism of that. And if we aren't strategically working the law enforcement thing, yeah, we can write 1,000 automated tickets for people going 5 miles an hour over on Lincoln, but I'd much rather change public behavior. Let's all be frank about this. We all remember which areas used to have a motorcycle cop in school zones, and there was real threat of getting pulled over versus a 1 in 30 chance of there being a photo radar van on a street that isn't a school zone, isn't a high impact pedestrian crossing. So I just feel there's this disconnect between sort of citizen trust and what we expend our money on the enforcement side and what the needs are on the enforcement side. And again, I'll just close with, I understand that oversteps sort of the goals of this panel, but it all fits hand in hand with one another. So I'd be remiss if I didn't bring that up. And I just felt like that had not been brought up in the last couple of months. That's all I got.
Thank you, Paul. And just to chat a little bit about that, going back to that state legislation regarding where you can actually have photo enforcement, it is limiting, if you will. So anyways, yeah. So there's that. Also, you got to be going over 10 mile an hour over the speed limit to get a citation with the speed van. So you're looking at 40 plus on that roadway. But yeah. Any other questions? Okay.
This is Julie. I just want to ditto the request for if there's data on right turn auto pedestrian accidents, because it's something that really concerns me for our neighbors who can't see. Because I know when I'm crossing the street, I won't cross till I make eye contact, because so often people are not looking right. And particularly if you, like, those of us that are in chairs, or people or children or people that are just shorter, it's very harrowing. So I just wanted to put in I think that would be really good information, if nothing else.
Yeah, and I'll see what kind of data we have on that. And one of the mitigating factors or treatments, I should say, is that pedestrian lead interval, LPI. So it's when before the motorist gets the green light, the pedestrian gets the walk signal. So the pedestrian can get 2 or 3 steps into the crosswalk and kind of claim that space. Makes it easier for the motorist to yield to them for those right turns. Left turns, again, if the motorist is just looking for the gap between the vehicles, they may not be watching for that pedestrian. That's a high injury situation. So therefore, looking at those protected signals, if you will, would give each user their separate phasing. So it completely takes that off the table, so to speak, that encounter. So, but yeah. Okay. Moving along. You all want to hear about question number 1? Okay. I think Alan had the first few questions we'll go through. So just kind of get into it, going in the wrong directions despite our best efforts. Let's see here.
For up-to-date information on rail disruptions or delays, sign up for RTD service alerts at RTD.
Okay, so yeah, so I said yes. Thank you for the question. And this is a trend we are seeing across the country. But looking at the approach that we follow, a safe systems approach, it aligns with our crash data. That there isn't usually just one reason why a crash happens, but instead there are a series of events that take place, from behaviors to street design to everything that may lead to a crash. But the more kind of safety interventions that can be put in place helps us hopefully mitigate that serious outcome at the end. It's kind of the Swiss cheese approach. But looking at safer vehicles, safer speeds, safer roads, safer people, post-crash care, all these, and I think of it more in terms of our safety policies. We talked about the automated enforcement, our rapid response process, going out there and figuring out, okay, this crash happened. Is this a trend? If it is, what are some things that can be done at this location so this crash doesn't happen again? Our road safety audits, traffic safety cameras, signal retiming, improving pedestrian crossing treatments, transit facilities, as well as messaging, seatbelt usage messaging, booster seat, start people when they're young. But all these things, you keep layering them on, and hopefully that crash doesn't get, that serious or fatal crash doesn't get through. So a bit of a safe system approach. And we can see that in a few examples. One I brought up before about the 20th and I-25 intersection, where we had a series of 40 similar harmful crashes that resulted in 2 fatals and several serious bodily injury crashes. Many of them were DUI related. You all may remember this from last year's presentation. And with that, is working for a while, really improved safety for a while. There was one fatality, and with that, working with CDOT, again, partnering with CDOT and our other agencies, but going back out there, rebuilding the refuge island in concrete, updating the curb ramps, the striping, the signage, just, keep adding on those safety improvements. Other treatments, again, we talked about the speed safety cameras. So speed violation, we're seeing close to a 70% reduction in citations issued. That means that people aren't speeding as often in those locations because of the cameras when they're there. Same with red light. And this is important because these cameras, they're there all the time, right? So we see between, just over 35%, 20% decrease in violations. That's basically catching anybody who's running red light, and seeing those numbers is a good sign. All right, let's see here. We talked about the crashes, and that's what's really important about those red light safety cameras, is that's what helps get it either I shouldn't say making the left, but seeing that getting hit while making the left is similar to running that red light, so to speak. So those broadside crashes, the red light safety cameras really help with decreasing those broadside type crashes. The other thing I wanted to bring up that continue to do is evaluate our efforts and not just rely on crash data 3 years later, like many cities do, but try to better understand the behaviors, either it be speed, yielding behaviors, if there's close calls, so to speak, intercept surveys, trying to better understand that, are we hitting the mark with our projects? Are we seeing that behavior change that we hope to with the improvement? If not, then what other improvements can we layer on in order to get there? So that's something that we just started this fall, and we're going to continue to do it moving on. We have done it kind of one-off here and there in the past, but really trying to stand this up and make it a more holistic standard operating procedure, if you will. Also asked about looking at our high injury network. Let's see here. So again, we talked about we're looking more closely at our data with those tier 1 segments on the high injury network. Continue to implement the road safety audits, and it's as though 1 year we'll do the analysis, we'll do the road safety audit, we'll get the report, we'll make some of the small quick improvements that we can, and then for those other ones that need design or some other bigger treatment, we'll put it into the next year's budget, get funded, and keep rolling. I gotta say, for some of the bigger projects that come out of the road safety audits, we rely a lot on federal and state grants. So we used many of these reports for that Safer Streets for All grant. And we're hoping to hear back here at the end of the year, if not at the beginning of next. And I appreciate you all writing a letter of support for that effort. So thank you for that. Fingers crossed that we'll get that. And in addition to Safer Streets for All, just moving right along. Sorry. Oh, sorry, I kind of skipped ahead here. So I think this is in the other presentation, the road safety audit. These are the corridors that we're looking at, all the ones that are kind of boxed off there for road safety audits. And for the benefit of the group, we do it not only during the daytime, but at the night in low light and night conditions. Helps us better understand when the crashes are happening and what it looks and feels like out there in those conditions. Those are examples of the report. These are the projects that we're tracking in a dashboard with regards to low, medium, and high investment locations and status. So my team does a great job of tracking all of the efforts that come out of those. And then this is where I was trying to get to in terms of, we have our Safer Streets for All grant, and then we also have the Highway Safety Improvement Program, focuses mainly on our signals, if you will. And then there was a new program out of CDOT, Safer Main Streets program. And with those, there are several projects that the Vision Zero team helped do transportation planning for and go after those dollars. Everything from, almost 2 million up to 6 million worth of investment. And as you know, that Safer Streets for All grant is upwards around 30 million is what we're hoping to get all said and done with the match. So anyways, so those are the efforts that we're trying to do on those high entry network roadways. Got to say that transit, we're looking at street design and doing those roadway reconfigurations is a proven safety countermeasure. So if can take 4 lanes, bring it down to 2 with the center running bus rapid transit. You eliminate basically that opportunity for vehicles to kind of pass and zoom in between each other and side swipes and rear endings, if you will. So with those street designs, they could very much make a significant difference in safety. Okay, system-wide improvements, reflective backplates. That's something that we have recently started to do and will continue to do so, especially help out when when a signal isn't working, especially at night. So there's a signal there. Doesn't happen very often, but if and when it does. But then also in low light conditions or sun glare, it helps that signal pop out a little better. Helping with running red lights. And then you all are familiar probably with the LED street light conversion, adding additional street lights and the difference, but it is also a FHWA proven safety countermeasure with street lighting. All right, moving right along, what we've learned from peer cities, what has been successful. Few things. One, setting our own speed limits. So Mike King's going to touch on this here in a little bit, but cities like Seattle, Portland, Minneapolis, Boulder, Boston, in terms of that speed limit, we are in a unique position where the state allows us to set our own speed limit, and we've been able to reduce our default speed limit to 20 miles an hour. But that's a big effort that we can do. Also, photo enforcement, looking at New York City with their traffic safety cameras. They really started theirs in their schools and during the school time frame, and then expanding out, gaining support and expanding out, as you all mentioned. This is a very sensitive program and not wanting it to be a gotcha kind of money grab by any means, but that's why we've been very conservative, I'd say, with our program. Just we want to make sure it's as data driven as possible. We can lean back, fall back on the data, and show that it is working. We've done many improvements. We do, exhausted all their possible improvements of that signal, and this is kind of the last option and putting them out there. But maybe there's future legislation that can be written that allows us to put them in mixed commercial residential areas where you have a higher pedestrian area, or having them unstaffed, adding them to our traffic safety cameras. Washington, D.C. has traffic safety cameras where they're working on a contract that will allow the camera not only to do red light, but also speed, also on stop signs. If you're rolling stop signs, it'll catch you. There are those peer cities that are doing these types of things, and their technical advisory board, if you will, they help with safety legislation and vetting it. Something that came from Boulder, just up the road, was a new left turn policy for signals and just the timing, and they found success there with just kind of determining best practices with setting their signal timing with left turns. And that's something that we're now integrating into our road safety audits and our signals. New York City, I don't know if you all saw this, but they outfitted 50 of their city vehicles with speed limiters or governors, basically. Something that we have a call set up thanks to the National Association of Traffic Safety organization, and we're going to meet with them as well as Madison, Wisconsin, to better understand the process with that. I know we have telematics, so I don't know if there'd be much of a difference or improvement for us, but that's something that we're reaching out. So just, the other city that you may have heard in the news recently, but Hoboken, New Jersey, they haven't had a single fatality in a few years. So sat down with their public works director at the NACDO conference this fall. And we're talking a little bit apples to oranges with their cities. Their city is 4 square miles, 2 of which are part of the river, it looks like, and it's very dense. But nonetheless, what can we learn from them? And one thing was how well they align their safety projects with their repaving. So when they repave, they go out and they put in safety projects, right? So how can we better align our safety projects with our repaving schedule? So I know the bike team does a pretty good job of that, but yeah. But then with that, I'd say there are several cities, as you can imagine, that have learned from us. And with those, with our Safe Route School Action Plan, Charlotte, Madison, Boulder, they've all reached out to us regarding that. Our rapid response program, DC reached out to us, as well as our telematics program. Community connectors, that's another program where individuals in the community become staff members of the organization, and they help with booster seat, seatbelt, general culture safety education. And that's something that other cities have reached out to us about. So just wanted to bring that up, that we have presented at the Vision Zero Network, the Institute of Transportation Engineers, NACDO, ESRI, Safe Route School Partnership, CDOT, Dr. Cog. These are all organizations in the last few years that they have asked us to come and present about our safety work, as well as individual cities, and the list is longer, that have reached out to us directly saying, hey, how'd you do this? Definitely a cooperative environment. It's a small community, and work definitely with our peer cities. The other question, what kind of conversations have we had with CDOT to partner on our most dangerous streets? I'd say the big thing is we have integrated them and continue to do so with our governance structures. So, they attend our Vision Zero Technical Advisory Committee quarterly meetings, our biennial executive committee Vision Zero meetings. We attend their safety meetings, either be a part of their occupant protection task force. And we also work with them on pushing out safety messages with Sam Cole and putting out messages over the interstates, or just Twitter or other media channels, working with them. So a lot of partnership there, as well as in terms of planning and being a part of their urban arterials plan that is set to kick off here pretty soon. Grant coordination and leveraging the state funds, the Safe Route School grants, the Safer Streets, the HSIP or the Safety Improvement Grants. Those are all areas we coordinate with. In addition, they attend our rapid response site visits. So if there's a fatal that happens on one of the roadways, we go on out with them to better understand. And you saw a picture of that with the CDOT vest in the picture of the I-25 and 20th Street project. Our city traffic engineer has monthly meetings with them, and we work with them on the traffic safety cameras, like I mentioned, because we have to get their approval in order to put those cameras up. So there's just a few examples of how we work with CDOT, partner with them on our streets, or on, their streets. Question, we talked a bit about this, but the speed safety camera legislation, I believe maybe Jason may know this, but I think there might even be a draft out there floating around of some legislation that a legislator did draft up for 2023, though I don't know if that state legislator will still be in office at that time, or if they're phasing out. I'm not sure, but maybe Jason can put something in the chat about that. But then to continue to support transit and bike and pedestrian expansions, help communicate. We have a process and tools for prioritizing where we're putting the resources, our equity index, our high injury network, where the crashes are happening, and trying to pair the root cause of those crashes with effective proven safety countermeasures, and continue to support community involvement with our projects. And if there are best practices that you all read about or hear about, to let us know. We definitely could be missing things that are coming up. So if there are things that you all see, and maybe catch this on NACTO's listserv or some of the listserv or the media or whatever, let us know. So just wanted to bring that up. And then I know we touched on this somewhat, but what holistic interventions are we performing on Colfax, Federal, Colorado? Looking at our bus rapid transit network, finding out where, how can we better align our safety efforts with transit improvements, street design. Like I said, investing in our bus rapid transit, the East Colfax BRT, roadway designs, prioritizing transit and pedestrian safety. The West Colfax project, not only retiming the lights, which after that, we haven't had a fatality on that roadway since doing that retiming, but also there are going to be more civil kind of signal projects and concrete projects being installed out on West Colfax coming up next year. And Federal, we just finished with some quick paint and post treatments. Again, working with CDOT, we got them plans, they repaved the road and they were able to install our striping that we had proposed and worked with them on. And then we came back through with some additional signage. Again, the medians and Colorado's signal projects, retiming, speed enforcement, and additional transit like we heard about earlier on. So those are some of the more holistic interventions that we're trying to do. And with that, that's my last slide, but I'm going to hand it over to Mike real quick to talk a little bit about the speed limit reduction feasibility study and where we're at there.
Great, thanks, Ralph. For those that don't know what the speed limit reduction feasibility study is, I do not blame you. It's a very long title, but it's what resulted in 20 is Plenty, the 20 is Plenty campaign, and a new look at slow zones and school zone speed limits across the city. So first and foremost, 20 is Plenty campaign. I'm sure all of you are aware that the ordinance changed earlier this year. DOTI has been trying to acquire the proper amount of funding to do a citywide sign change. We have now officially acquired all of that, the dollar that we expect, and have a contract out to bid currently. We're expecting that bid to close in Q1 of next year, assuming that we do receive the proper amount of bids so that we can move forward. And it's in the price range that we're expecting. Once that happens, we will have a lot of sign swaps from that 25 to 20 miles an hour on our local streets. I can provide more details on that as people have questions, but really the high level change for how the signs will be installed on our local streets is, rather than the kind of one-off signs that we have currently, as I'm sure you drive around your neighborhoods, you see one that's 5-6 blocks into a neighborhood and only 2 or 3 people get to see it a day because it's on their street. We have taken a strategy from Portland, Oregon, lining neighborhoods with the 20-mile-an-hour speed limit sign. So the first thing you see when you pull off of a major arterial would be a sign that says speed limit 20 miles an hour unless otherwise posted citywide. Really trying to use those signs as our general messaging, but also make sure that as soon as you enter a neighborhood, that is really the first thing you're seeing. And what qualifies for a major arterial is an arterial with 20,000 average daily travelers, or a speed limit of 35 miles an hour or greater. So really think, high injury network plus some of their major arterials that are between those network streets. And with that, we will have some yard sign programs going on as well. We'll be working with some of the council offices to share those for you all. And so that's the highlight for 20 is Plenty. And then for school zones, we're just looking at getting that back up to kind of national standards. The school zone policy hadn't been reviewed in about over 10 years at Denver for a holistic review. There's been some minor tweaks, but we really wanted to make sure that we're keeping up with the national trends, including more schools than just elementary school age students, and trying to set a static speed limit in some of those school zones. But a lot of that conversation is still being completed with CDOT to make sure that we are in the realm and rights to be able to make the changes that we're hoping to make. But more to come on that. And hopefully there's an announcement coming Q1 of next year with that policy changing. And then slow zones is the last piece of the study. And those are something that we're looking at implementing to help pedestrian crossings in areas where, the typical RFB or hawk signal, those, the lighted pedestrian crosswalks aren't going to cut it. In meaning we're not going to be able to channelize pedestrians into a specific crossing area. So think of the areas, along our regional parks where there's a 2-lane roadway where a lot of people will just park on the road and cross the street directly from where they park. We're trying to make those areas where we see that type of pedestrian interaction on the road have slower speeds and be a little bit more, just make people more aware that there's going to be pedestrians on the road in those areas. So again, that's also something we can send as it is completed. But those are 3 big things coming from that study. I know I'm sure a few of you kind of followed along with it and maybe had not heard much recently, but it's because it's really just tying up those loose ends and finding a lot of budget so that we can switch some signs in our neighborhoods.
Okay, that's our presentation for tonight. Happy to answer any additional questions you all had.
I do have one answer to a question that came up, that left turn versus right turn crashes with pedestrians. If you don't mind me going on that first, Jake, or do you want to?
Yeah, go for it.
So I did pull the data, and for the last 5 years, left turn crashes with pedestrians, there were about 500 total crashes of left turns with pedestrians, 72 of which resulted in a serious bodily injury and 3 of which were fatal. That is, so that's for left turns. For right turns, we're looking at 225 over 5 years, 19 of which were serious bodily injury and 2 of which were fatal. I think the story that, just looking at this very high level, obviously looking citywide, can't really look at crash to crash at this rate, but is for left turning vehicles, there's, as Rolf mentioned before, there's not always one specific reason why a crash happens. There's usually a few. One, there's the ability to get to a higher speed, making that left turn because there's more road space to start your turn movement. 2, there's more distraction for a left turning vehicle. Primarily, they're looking at the oncoming traffic and trying to gauge the oncoming traffic rather than the crosswalk that's across the oncoming traffic. And then for right turning vehicles, it's usually typically at a stop sign or a area where there is a tighter curve, a tighter turn, which causes the vehicle to move slower. And again, only looking at the crosswalk rather than looking at lanes of traffic as well. So that's typically what would cause such a stark difference in left turn versus right turn pedestrian crashes.
Thank you, Mike. I did have a brief question. I know in recent years, vehicle design itself has gotten particularly challenging, and they've gotten the operator of the vehicle and the passengers have gotten safer and safer over time, while those outside of the vehicle have gotten less safe. How does that factor into our Vision Zero picture in Denver? Is that something we need to start looking at as a personal responsibility component in addition, like wear a helmet, consider a smaller hood on your vehicle? I mean, I don't really know. It's tough to address consumer interest, but it seems like it's a big factor here.
Yeah, that's something I'd recently reached out to NACDO about, and also New York City, for folks who may not be familiar with this, but it's like direct vision standards. Maybe you can see this, but how can vehicles have better viewing, if you will, and not that big A-frame that prevents line of sight from the operator inside. But yeah, what I'm interested in better understanding what NHTSA, what federal government is leaning on in this space. But also, again, in the Vision Zero action plan, talking about our fleet modifications, what can we do, and where that may go. Certain cities, I believe it's Boston, they make sure that their vehicles have side guards, and also contractors who are doing work for them, their vehicles also have to have side guards. So, you know, I mean, just kind of looking into that space. Maybe it's side guards, maybe it's telematics, maybe it's something else, maybe it's looking and pursuing vehicles that are more like this, the direct vision vehicles. That's a good point. Something that I've started to kind of ask about and ask our federal partners, where, you know, other countries are doing it. Is there an interest here? But I know it's bigger than Denver, but still.
Well, I appreciate you looking into that, and not seeing any other comments. Really appreciative of all the time you guys have put into this, and all the work that you do broadly to try to keep our city safer.
Right. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Rolf. Thank you, Mike. Awesome. Moving ahead here, we do need to move into the topic of the DOTI Advisory Board leadership election. As you may know, Jonathan, myself, and Alan took over for the end of terms. And so we actually, our term ends at the end of this year. So as Alan said in his email, forgive us for the late information here, but one thing we need to develop is our plan for leadership for 2023. My understanding is that all three of us have agreed to be candidates for the purpose of continuation on this board. So we are some of your options. I know Alan additionally sent out the nomination form for the crew more broadly. If you have any interest in nominating yourself or someone on the board, that is something to look at. Jonathan, Alan, anything else you guys want to add on your end?
I think nothing significant. Apologies, this has come up again so soon. I know we've had so many elections and we're tired of them, but bylaws are bylaws. We do have to re-elect for the new terms.
No, Jake, I think this is a great summary. Just keep an eye out for that email. I sent it out a few hours ago. The nomination link is on there. If you have any trouble getting to it, feel welcome to ping me here on chat or email me. I'm happy to send it out again.
Awesome. Thanks so much for doing that, Alan. Any additional comments, questions about the election process for DOTI from the board? All right, cool. So our next item on the agenda is about looking forward to 2023. So the purpose of this is to discuss objectives and goals for the DOTI Advisory Board for 2023, and what we want to achieve as a board. So can kind of open it up from there. Obviously, we've done a lot of great projects in 2022, and I think some of the work we've just started. So would love to hear more from the board as a whole about what goals and priorities you all would like to have for the next year. Joe?
Yeah, well, I've been somewhat frustrated. I think it's gotten better, and this is a good meeting, about the maybe lack of transparency from DOTI, a couple of things, and we really haven't got much information from them. I don't know if Nick is still on, but just it hasn't been kind of as a reaction of getting our opinions about kind of what's going on, if that's right. And I know that was pretty frustrating with the budget. So how do we just kind of get a little bit more involved sooner and all that? Because it really was kind of a big push, and I thank everybody, Alan, especially for putting that all together. But it's kind of bizarre. That's one of our goals. And you don't get a week to do that. We have all year to figure that out. So hopefully we can get more involved earlier and get their attention earlier.
I think that makes a lot of sense, Joe. Lucia?
Yes. So I was wondering regarding this is sort of a old horse, but not just about traffic and stuff, but just one of the other things I think, DOTI's involved in, I'm not sure who, neighborhood inspections that deals with things like the fencing and doing things like that. I would love to get a presentation on how a lot of the rules that DOTI is involved in are enforced. Like, I don't know if it's neighborhood inspections or even, who does neighborhood inspections even fall under? I don't know, but there's a lot of, when you have a tripping hazard, when you have cars that are parked illegally, I know some of that might be police, but some of it is, when there's some of it's health and human services. I don't know. I'm just kind of wanting to know how that goes. I feel like, it's, you never know. You call 311 and it goes into the abyss. So I would love to hear from DOTI and how they deal with enforcement issues that come to them directly.
Happy to chime in. Sorry, Jake.
Go ahead, Jason.
Just to give you a heads, like the neighborhood inspections under CPD, which is community planning and development, and then there's also the right-of-way enforcement, which is under DOTI. So it's a mixture of everything, but we're happy to work with you on that. So it's if you're tripping over sidewalk, that's us. If there's a fence or some issue, or there's snow shoveling that needs to be done, that's CPD.
It will probably become DOTI at some point with sidewalks. Is that correct?
We've always had sidewalks, and that enforcement side has not been with us. So unless something changes, I don't think that will become DOTI's. Neighborhood inspections will become part of DOTI, but it could happen.
Okay, thanks.
Eileen?
Sorry, it's dinner time at the McCallum household. So I am curious, is there any precedent that would get the DOTI advisory board involved with the selection of the next DOTI executive director? Like, I don't know if the Parks Department advisory board has been involved in that process at all, or other advisory boards. I mean, obviously the new mayor will select and make the final decision. I think it gets approved by council, and I completely understand that. But I don't know, is there a way for us to be involved to a degree? I don't know if we can put together a platform that we'd love to have the person who wins the next mayoral race, see in the next executive director. A lot of the things that we're talking about are led by the executive director of DOTI. And I would just, if there's any way that we can have a say in that, I think that could be really impactful. Even if it means that somebody gets picked to lead the DOTI, be the executive director, and we weren't involved at all. But maybe even if we had like a letter of goals that we want them to see, just something where we're aligned and where we'd love to see the leadership of this department, considering the advice of this department.
And happy to chime in there too. The short answer is it depends. This was the responsibility is up to the mayor, and we can't speak on behalf of the mayor on that aspect. But I do think there's probably value in putting together what you guys would like to see in a DOTI executive director, and then sharing that with the incoming mayor as they are on the search for, replacing some of these executive directors that may be leaving the administration. But without knowing who that is, whether they'll be willing to look at that or not, it's too hard to tell. But I'm sure that any mayor that comes in would love to hear opinions of the boards that are working within those agencies.
Is it out of line for this board to invite the the runoff candidates for mayor, because there'd only be two, so maybe for a May meeting that, we know by May who the final two are. Is that out of line for this board? Is that getting too involved in politics?
I would let the board discuss. I mean, to speak to that, we don't govern the board. It's the board kind of governs itself on that. But I do think you get into murky water when you start diving into the politics of things.
Yeah, just to be clear with everyone, my only vision was just honestly like we come up with a series of questions and we'd ask both of them to answer those questions with us. That was, and we would provide no public comment, just as a opportunity for us to hear and meet one-on-one, considering we would need to be building relationships with that individual and then their appointee. So.
Thank you. Yeah, I think like Jason said, we don't have an official, I haven't read the city charter in a way that would prohibit that, but I think that there's some bylaws that we'd have to review on our end, as well as we'd obviously have to have board approval broadly to look into that. So I think that that's something we can look at as well. I do think for me personally, I might add that kind of piggybacking on Aileen, I do think there's going to be a lot of change in city government early next year, in the first half of next year. And I do think that we have the opportunity to be the only relatively like political body for DOTI that stays put. So thinking about how we can help the department with continuity and carryover amongst the administrations and potentially council changes might be something we want to look at. It doesn't necessarily have to be political, but how can we anchor goals of this board and of the department itself to carry over between administrations might be something that we want to look at as well. I'm seeing a lot of contemplative eyes. I don't know if the comments are just about to come. Did any of those goals that anyone outlined stand out in particular to anyone and want to add it to a next agenda item?
I would very much agree that we need faster and more clarity on what DOTI is planning as far as projects, so that we can have an impact through review and soliciting citizens' responses. Right now, it feels like we're the tail of the dog, and I just think that we need to be up front and up in front of it to be effective, to have any real value as an advisory board. So I would champion that.
All right. Any other items anyone wants to add in this section before I move on to the next one? All right. Opening it up for odds and ends. Any items that we may not have had on the agenda that anyone on the board would like to discuss?
This is Jamie. Just a reminder, the DOTI Subcommittee Policy Committee will be meeting on December 21st, 10 to 11 a.m. And our 2023 priorities pretty much run the same as what we've been talking about. including the budget process, which I think we've closed out. I think we sent a letter to the finance committee asking them to look into that. Reviewing the 5-year plan with DRCOG to see what projects are coming up. The right of way again, unfortunately, micromobility and the sidewalk program. We'll be looking, as I mentioned earlier, at some suggestions on how to improve the process for that to help Dottie along. So thanks.
I'll add on that obviously there was lots of discussion about I-25 and Broadway today. The Broadway and I-25 subcommittee has met. It kind of some small discussions around it today, but basically major ask from that committee was the response from the department, which sounds like from Nick and Adam, we should be able to expect that pretty shortly. We're also able to confirm that there's no there's no impending deadline that they identified, but I think that there's still a lot moved on that project. So expedient response to that community is something that I'd love to see, and I'm sure many of you would as well. All right, I'm not seeing a lot of hands. Oh, Alan, sorry.
I just want to say, I know it's been said half a dozen times so far, but I just want to say thank you again to Michelle for being such a positive influence on this group and for all the hard work that she has put in over the last 2 years. It's definitely gone noticed, and I think everyone appreciates her for everything she's done.
All right. If there's nothing else, I think that that's a phenomenal place to adjourn. And we can give a little bit of time back to everyone's evenings. So thank you all for joining and making this a great and effective meeting.
Happy holidays, everybody.
Happy holidays, everyone. See you next year.